Hi everyone, I am here today with Regena Thomas-Schauer, and I could not be more excited. I've been looking forward to this opportunity for weeks actually, and I'm a very new but passionate fan of hers and have heard about her work for many years. And for whatever reason, in fact I can't even remember who recommended the book to me or how it came into my consciousness, but somehow it ended up in my Amazon cart, and I just finished her latest book called Pussy, a Reclamation, and have recommended it to every patient and every woman, and actually many men that I know, because I think that she is championing a message that pretty much only she could champion in the way that, and I'm so thrilled to be able to introduce her work to those of you who are not familiar with it. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her biography, just so you have a sense. So she is totally self-taught, which I think is incredible, of course, in social, cultural, and economic history of women's empowerment and essentially all manner of feminist practice. And she uses her more than 15 years of research and her knowledge of female pleasure to open doors for women today by giving them a context in which to maximize their power, passion, enthusiasm, and creativity. So she teaches and is famous for teaching the Womenly Arts Mastery Program, which is a 6-month course. She's helped hundreds of women, many of whom I know personally, discover the power of pleasure and create their own dreams. It's beautiful. So she's also, of course, a best-selling author of 3 books published by Simon & Schuster: Mama Gena's School of Womenly Arts, Using the Power of Pleasure to Have Your Way with the World, Mama Gena's Owner's and Operator's Guide to Men, and Mama Gena's Marriage Manual. So welcome, Regena. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm so honored to be here with you and to bump up against and meet and encounter all of the women who are aligned with the work you do, which it has so much synergy with my work.
Yes, that's my sense too. It's just tremendous complementarity. And again, I'm, as everyone who's followed my work knows, I'm new to this realm. You know, I spent many decades of my life in a very different story, and so I get very excited when I learn about women who've really in many ways blazed the trail for me to walk down. So I'm excited to have this conversation. And on that note, wanted to maybe just dive in and start to talk about a bit of your philosophy and how you've come to it. So you and I have both, I think, come to an understanding that feminism or women's lib or women's empowerment can look very different, right? That there are many different types, many different approaches to this end goal, so to speak. So I'd love to know, you know, at this point in your personal life, in your career, what have you come to understand true women's empowerment to look like?
Well, all of us owe so much to Susan B. Anthony, to Lucretia Mott, to all of the women who broke open those doors. You know, the Seneca Falls Conference was 1848. Women didn't even have the right to vote.
Yes.
And now we've come so far. We just had the first candidate for president was a female, which is something unthinkable all those years ago. But that first wave of feminism came into existence because of anger. Mm-hmm. Women were furious at not getting paid equally, not being able to own property, not having the right to vote, not having equal rights as men. And of course, that conversation is nowhere near over.
Yes.
But what each of us, like what I call fourth wave feminism, which is what my work is about, is where we are taking, rather than attacking the patriarchy, in addition to understanding the inequities and the differences, we're looking to see how can we begin to bring the values of the feminine into the larger culture, so that it's about appreciating and connecting with the privilege of being a woman, and listening to our intuition, the importance of community and connection, the priority of feeling every drop of your emotional truth and standing for it, and standing for those values. Because right now our world is skewed in the direction of a patriarchy, meaning certain of the masculine values are supported and celebrated, and the values of the feminine are not even understood or considered important. So it's up to each woman to connect to those values inside of herself and then teach the world about them. Because the world is hungry, desperately hungry for new ideas and the voice of the feminine. It's my conviction that women are the greatest untapped natural resource on this planet.
They give me goosebumps. Yes.
And the time to tap the feminine is now. And it's not just the feminine in every woman, but the feminine that lives in every man as well. So it's a very exciting, tumultuous time to be alive, to be a woman, and to celebrate the privilege of it, what it means to be a woman, and not get lost inside the response of anger completely. That is appropriate sometimes, but to have this other vocabulary at our fingertips as well.
So I want to highlight two things you said. One is that you talk about it being a privilege to be a woman. And I think when you come into this perspective, you shed a lot of the, victimhood and a lot of the stories that we have been so deeply indoctrinated with that it's almost, difficult for some women to imagine that it would ever be considered a privilege to be a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we live in a world where women are disparaged and diminished and disadvantaged in so many ways. But if we, just kind of like pull the tablecloth off the patriarchy, we look underneath, we create life. Like that's what this body is capable of. It's a collaboration. In collaboration with our divine, this body gets to give life. So it's so phenomenal to be able to connect with just that raw truth about what it means to be a woman. And the feminine is unexplored. Most of us were taught to man up. Put our heads down, get the work done. The goal is the most important. Don't feel, be logical.
Don't be a pussy.
And that is, and we shut down our ability to plug into our sensual brilliance, our sensual power, that expansive intuition that we each possess. So once a woman actually becomes familiar with that, which is what all my work is about, whether it's Pussy, a Reclamation, or the live courses, when a woman begins to plug in to what that means to have the privilege of 8,000 nerve endings dedicated to pleasure, what it means to have her emotional truth embodied and considered important and righteous, and not try to be sugar and spice and everything nice, but to actually feel free to express the full range of her passion, her grief, her rage, her devastation, her joy, when she's playing all 88 keys of her piano.
Yes.
And can fully embody every aspect of her presence in this world and live the legend that she was born to become, then that is a game-changing moment for a woman, where she is suddenly, every woman is a work of art rather than an offense or just something that gets in the way of a patriarchal goal.
Machine.
So Exactly. So I like to, it's such a privilege to turn a woman on to who and what she truly is and what she was born to be.
Amen. Amen.
It's important. That's what you're doing.
Well, it's never been more important, as you're saying. And I want to also highlight a critical point that you've made, which is that this is not just about women being turned on, right? That it's also about the feminine principle on a global scale, but also in, the men of the population, not only to understand how to orient themselves around a woman's Shakti, so to speak, or around a woman's, wild energy, but even to feel it within themselves and to come into a state of balance of these two principles, right? So this is not just about, obviously, just one gender superseding the other. That's the old story is something of what you're trying to say, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
And so you mentioned these nerve endings, right? So I've come to talk to my patients and friends about your work and these principles as sort of desire-based living. And a lot of people are skeptical, as I'm sure you encounter all the time, because, to them, the pursuit of pleasure and even joy it has been really made synonymous with, laziness or self-indulgence, selfishness, and it seems like exactly how to get yourself off track to sort of follow this pleasure principle. So tell us how you're reframing that as actually exactly what may be needed to be engaged so that you can get exactly where you want to go.
Yeah. It's an interesting time because women were brought up to take care of their husbands, take care of their bosses, take care of their families, take care of their kids.
Their house, yeah.
Their house, the laundry, do all the cooking, handle a full-time job, running a company, in addition to all the tasks at home. We were taught to take care of everyone, but we were never, ever, ever taught to pay attention to our own joy as a value or to take care of ourselves. And coincidence? Maybe, and maybe not. Women are the most stressed, overworked, all of us. No one has enough time. We're all desperately trying to catch up with a to-do list that never, ever, ever ends. And even when you get to the end of the tasks, it's not like there's this huge party thrown in your honor.
Right.
More tasks are, there's always more tasks. It's impossible to give when your well is dry. Absolutely impossible. Even when you're on an airplane, they say put your, the oxygen on you first.
That's right.
Before you give it to your kid. But as women, we've been taught to overlook and ignore our pleasure for centuries, as if it was unimportant. Or and what happens is a woman. Well, you could do this following lecture that I'm going to do in a very non-scientific way. Kind of works like this, like cortisol, stress, which we're all basically dripping in stress because we all have way too much to do. And so a woman, what happens inside of a woman's body is she'll be filled with, she'll just get up in the morning and her first thought will be, oh my God, do I have time to wash my hair? I have to get to the office. Right. Did I pack the kids' lunches? I have a meeting this afternoon. I have to quickly write a report to get that in before I have to go. The subways are running late. Should I take a cab? And her body is flooded with stress hormone. And all of her little cells are going, oh no, oh God, please don't do this to us. Please, just stay calm. Because
totally.
they're drowning. And yet a woman, if she chooses to interrupt that cycle and have a pleasurable experience. Now, whenever I say the word pleasure, everyone panics. They say, oh, Regena, you mean sex? And the answer is, yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, but pleasure is much more than sex. Pleasure is when a woman connects to the poetry that lives inside of her. It might be that she lights a candle when she has her coffee in the morning. It could be she uses that really delicious, little bit more expensive bath gel that she loves the smell of when she takes her morning shower. It could be that she throws a little gloss on before she hits the streets in the morning just because it makes her feel good inside. It could be that she every day opens to a new Shakespeare sonnet to read to herself on the subway because she just loves Shakespeare, even though she is an accountant. It's taking a moment to connect with what turns you on.
And without a sense of purpose, right? I think importantly, right? It makes me think of my favorite philosopher is Alan Watts, right? And he talks about how the point of dancing is not to get to the other side of the room, right? Like the point of, right? Like the point of listening to a piece of music is not to get to the end, that it's this purposeless, seemingly, we've dubbed it that, but it's this purposeless realm of, experience for the sake of experience that you're talking about.
Yeah, and we don't value that.
No, yeah.
And yet, what happens to all those little cells that are getting drowned in cortisol and begging for relief is they get flooded with nitric oxide, including beta-endorphin, prolactin, which are those hormones of bonding or that hormones of euphoria. And so suddenly, instead of being flooded with, just
danger. Yeah.
You're being flooded with a sense of aliveness,
yes,
and a sense of your own magnificence, and a sense of your own worthiness. And so instead of a woman stumbling into that meeting filled with self-doubt, self-hatred, self-deprecation, she just enters the room and she knows that she is divine, and she's magnificent, and she's beautiful, and she's capable each day before the sun sets of creating pleasure for herself, of filling her own well. And from there, she can be so generous with others.
And use the word radiance, which I love. It's the perfect description. It's really all she has to do at that point, right, is just allow that to emanate or radiate off of her. And she could literally transform the experience of those around her, just being herself.
Yeah, exactly. Women are so powerful. If we wake up cranky, we can torch a small village.
Yes.
And we have all done that. Everyone is going down with us, and we're going to make sure. And the opposite is also true, that if we wake up and we've lit our candle and we've done our dance break to our music and we've read our sonnet and had our coffee, God knows, 5-10 minutes of that, and suddenly we're radiant and we feel delicious, and everyone around us is taken higher. And that can only happen when a woman takes the time and the attention, not a lot of time, but a moment of reflection to ensure that her pleasure is part of the vitamins that she puts into her body that day.
I love that. I was just talking to a patient earlier this morning who's in the birth canal, so to speak, struggling a lot, right? And we were talking about perspective and choice. And, I think what you offer women is a roadmap to get from a place, I was talking to her about, most of us wake up, as you're saying, and we sort of immediately scan, what should we be freaking out about, right? Like, what is there to freak out about right now, right? And instead, the truth is, right, that when you feel connected to that divinity, you wake up, and just the mere fact that you have opened your eyes to this human experience one more day, you should literally be weeping with joy and wonder at just the fact that you are alive in this experience, right? But it's almost impossible for most of us, to get from that point to this point. And so I think what's so incredible about your work is you're really offering a roadmap, and that roadmap is critically involving, pleasure as a conduit to that kind of awakening. So your book is controversially called Pussy, a Reclamation, right? I was joking with a friend of mine that I make a very strong effort, to never use profanity in my writing or ever come across as any shades of gray, right? I really have to work hard on my credibility. And I was like, I've never used the word pussy in all of my blogging. How am I going to write a blog about this woman? But I have to tell. And it was such a funny thing, for me to even develop some degree of comfort with this as like a professional discussion, right? So you've used this word, you called this book Pussy, a Reclamation, which I just literally looked at the cover and something happened inside, which I'm sure is true for everyone who encounters it. So just because you do this so wonderfully in the book, but just let people know, so why the word pussy and what are we reclaiming exactly?
Well, pussy is about the most pejorative word in the English language.
It's probably true.
You call a man a pussy and you're insulting his manhood forever. You call a woman a pussy and she knows she's being attacked, she's being devalued, she's being treated like a sexual object. So basically, we live in a world where no one wants to be a pussy,
that's right,
much less have a pussy.
Exactly.
So, and it goes deeper and further than that. You can tell so much about a culture by what it ignores as what it values.
Yes.
And so, for example, when a little girl is born, she's treated very differently than when a little boy is born. Little boy has like head, shoulders, knees, toes, and a penis. And girls have head, shoulders, knees, toes, and nothing. I shouldn't say nothing. Sometimes you get a cute nickname like, Wiki or Cuckoo or Down There or Wee Wee or Princess or Knish or Walter Winchell. Yes, Walter Winchell. And so I'll always ask women in mastery, which is about 300 or 400 women, what were your bits and pieces get called? And most women will give me a slew of nicknames. There's hardly two that are the same. The majority of women, 50%, will say nothing.
Wow, that's profound.
It's profound. So we don't have a word to teach our little girls to connect with that which is most essentially feminine about them, their power source. And I have a lot of gynecologist daughters that will say, oh, my parents told me it was a vagina. It's a vagina. Right. And I'll be like, girl, actually, the only one who probably sees your vagina is your gynecologist with a speculum. And vagina means sheath, which is a thing the sword goes into. And there's no word for the exterior genitalia. Well, the correct term is vulva. But nobody really uses vulva.
Yeah, that didn't catch on. No.
It did not catch on. And the vulva includes the outer lips, the inner lips, the clitoris, the introitus. So it's an important word, because it would be like if we were teaching our little boys and we said, oh, by the way, that thing you got down there, it's called a scrotum. That's not what it's called. It's called a penis. So we allow this to happen. And women are made so uncomfortable that that it's very difficult for them to correct a centuries-old omission and teach our daughters the correct language. Now, I must tell you, when my daughter was a little girl, we did not use the word pussy. No. She said vulva. And it got me into trouble because she came back from kindergarten one day and she started calling it a vagina, and so of course I took myself into that classroom, sat myself down with the kindergarten teacher, and I was like, "Excuse me," but I ended up teaching a class of sex ed for grammar school parents.
Only you would take that on.
Yes, but they were generous with me, which was kind. But this is a problem because. In the beginning, there was the word. You can't begin any relationship if there's no language, if there is no word. And we are depriving our little girls of ever owning a sense of who they are as women when we deprive them of the language to describe that which is most essentially feminine. I had a student in my last intro last weekend who said that when she realized there was no name for that part, she developed a sense of shame. And the shame didn't just relate to that empty part. It was about being a woman. She felt there was something shameful about being a woman. That I think she is more typical than we would like to imagine, that all women feel an incredible amount of self-doubt, self-hatred, shame, because we don't feel right about our relationship to our bodies. And so all of my work is about teaching a woman, how do I embody this extraordinary, ragingly beautiful gift called the body woman? How do I inhabit it?
Yes.
How do I put my key in the ignition, turn that baby on, and take her down the highway?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I love your message coming into my own consciousness at the time that it has, because, I work with a lot of women who are in the process of transformation or are about to sort of initiate one unwittingly. I work with a lot of people from, the yoga community who are already self-proclaimed, spiritualists, so to speak, who have a spiritual practice. And often what I find is that reuniting with their body is the missing piece, that it cannot all be up here in the ethers. It certainly can't be all up here in the mind either, but it has to be a healing that is comprehensive. And of course, my bias is, healing through the portal of physical healing, through nutrition, etc. But I find that so many women who have experienced trauma, who have experienced abuse, or who have just been disconnected from themselves or their souls, over time, it's like their spirit has flown from their body. And this reunion is an important part of the essential integration that, you take an angle on that I just find it's never been more important to prioritize in a very serious way, what it means to take pleasure, joy, and self-mastery, to this extent. I think it's, it's not optional, really, is it?
You are so brave to be
it's just a big mouth.
in your profession, and to hold the truths that you hold to be self-evident, and to stand inside that world, that Western medical frame, and stand up for the values of the feminine in the way you do. It's
well, listen, if anything, perhaps it's just, more evidence for your database, right? Because when, I very much have had, as everyone who's ever followed my work knows, my own awakening over the past several years, and come into a very different type of feminine empowerment than I ever knew was possible when I, used to think of myself as a feminist, proclaiming, the warrior-like posture, the fight against patriarchy that I thought was the way to get there. But once you sort of touch on this place, it's like there's an almost invincibility that you experience, and more than that, it's joy. I mean, I go through my life, I experience joy all over the place. I don't experience stress anymore, and I attribute it to coming into, it's like this geyser of energy that is constantly coming up from, the cauldron, so to speak, and it's pretty awesome, so I would love to continue to show women how to get there, and that's obviously what I work on doing. And I think, you provide, especially in this book, and I'm sure in your courses. I'm going to be there in January for your intro weekend. But I know that you provide women such a tangible roadmap, to and help them understand where to begin, because I think these concepts make so much sense once you've arrived here, right? And so the burden is on many of us women who are trying to capture the rest, to describe what it's like to live life this way. But you don't just describe it, you provide tools and ritual and ceremony and small little details, like you said, like lighting a candle or dancing for 5 minutes in the morning, these things that we would otherwise think of as so frivolous. You sort of give women a real sense of where to begin with that. So it's more than just theory. Do you have in your mind sort of like one place to start if, let's say, we're talking about a woman who is, feeling totally disconnected from herself, feeling flat, feeling tired, feeling purposeless, like she hates her job, her marriage sucks, her body is like, falling apart because she's got IBS, she's overweight, she's got headaches all the time, she doesn't know what to eat because every book she reads tells her something new. And you're here telling her that she really needs to look into having an extended orgasm. And she's thinking, what? That couldn't be farther from my life experience right now. But I bet you have some like small entry point, a small little step that she could take just to begin to introduce this realm of experience, which of course then I'm sure you would argue opens up the door for more and more of it to come in. It attracts more of itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think, would be like if we could leave people with like one tool?
For the profile of the woman that you just described, there's no possible way on earth that she's going to choose a pleasurable activity.
That's right.
Pleasure's hard.
Yes.
It's like, if you'd called me in the middle of the night and you were like, I need a blood transfusion, I'd be like, I'll meet you at the hospital.
Yeah.
Whereas, you called me in the middle of the night and you were like, I'm at the best party. And I'd be like, what?
Why are you calling me? Exactly.
We don't have a value on pleasure, but the profile of the woman that you were just describing is a woman that's in a state of rupture. She's in a state where everything she's trying is blowing up. She's overworked, overstressed, overeating, she is just overwrought.
Yes.
And so the place where I have a chapter in my book, which is about something that I call swamping.
Yes, I wanted to talk about this.
And I think it's so key because women have been taught that, well, what do we say when you say, hi, how are you? The only response that we're taught is appropriate is that horrible 4-letter word, fine.
Yeah.
I've not ever been fine in my whole life.
And you're not going to start now, yeah.
I'm going to be like as enthusiastic as a crazed 6-year-old when something wonderful happens, or desperately sad when, something devastating happens. But fine is never something I want to be. So what I think it's really important for a woman to feel so righteous about her emotional truth. And I think it's so important for a woman not only to connect with that emotional truth, but to embody it.
Yes.
So I recommend in the book that a woman pipe in and just kind of notice, like, okay, I'm feeling pissed at my husband, at my boss, at the trains, at whatever side of the election she falls on, at the weather. It's getting really cold in New York. I'm feeling some rage. So I don't think it's good to stuff that inside and act fine.
Yes.
So what I would recommend is finding a playlist, finding a song that feels like it matches who and what you are inside, and then blasting that at either in your headphones or in your apartment if you don't have thin walls, and dancing it out, embody it, stomping, pounding pillows, getting down, in some way giving yourself permission to feel what you feel. The next stage, of course, is finding ways to communicate to others and so that other people can share your truth. But just even for a woman to say, yes, this is my truth about how I feel. I am 2 days away from getting my period and I am just wanting to tear the wallpaper off. And so giving herself permission to feel that is a huge step. And I find that once a woman says yes to that she begins to trust herself. She doesn't feel like she has to make those emotions go away. She feels like, whoa, this is my unfolding storyline. This is the adventure of me. And right now I am at the part of the erupting storyline called How Pissed I Am. And that will morph and evolve into the next step and the next chapter and the next verse of my adventure. And her willingness to say yes starts to open doors to her relationship with herself becoming even more a place of trust and love. And from there, she might feel like lighting a candle or making that delicious cup of tea, or in some way indulging herself as a woman. But her emotional truth has to come first.
I love this.
Thought about that.
No, I love this. I mean, I think it's not only does it evoke in me like some ancestral sense of what we're missing, right? That women, since the beginning of human history, have done this, right? We've often done it together in ceremony and ritual. We've moved and sung. Yeah.
You got it.
We don't do it anymore. So you're trying to bring that back in a private way. Start there.
Yeah. But you're right. I'm so glad you brought forward the community piece, because how this happens with the most velocity, the best container, the most support is with girlfriends in a community of sisterhood. That's why all of my classes are taught live.
Yes.
Because women need women. We hold each other's feet to the fire, both in terms of our emotional truth and living our dreams. And being able to see one another's greatness and stand for it. So it's which harks back to your first question about feminism. Like, our job as women today, we need each other.
Yes.
But it's not the neediness of old, where I'm desperate, I need you to be there for me all night long while I cry.
Right.
It's, I need you to step into your greatness,
exactly,
your power, your magnificence, your radiance. Why? Because the bigger your light shines, the bigger my light can shine.
Yes.
And the world, we can step exponentially into our power as women inside of community in a way that is not possible if we're each on a solo journey. And every woman understands that at some deep level.
Yes, intuits that. We have this sense. I think that's absolutely true. I say it to every patient I meet at the end of a consultation. I need you. We all need you to do this, right? To walk this very hard road. And that's why I think, I was so moved, to read this chapter in your book, which you call Rupture, and to see that you, of course you get it, but that you get it, that struggle and suffering is a portal. It's a very necessary thing to come into contact with the so-called shadow sides, with grief and rage and fear and anger, and just let it flow. And like you said, when you do, you learn its arc, right? You learn that it has, this crescendo, and then it passes and evolves. And actually, maybe there's a whole new set of emotions on the other end of it that you would never get to if you were so preoccupied with stuffing it somewhere, or of course, in my arena, medicating it away. And so that this could be an instrumental part of your growth and evolution is something we've never been told. We've only ever been told crying. I mean, literally in psychiatry, crying, tearfulness, as it's called, is a symptom. It's literally a symptom of illness, of mental illness. So imagine that. We live in a society where literally the most natural human expression of grief or sadness or overwhelm is a pathology. So, man, do we need to rewrite the story, for all of us, and to make room for this kind of, wildness, that you are suggesting may be exactly what's necessary for the planet on the whole, not even just for each individual. It's really extraordinary for me to feel the resonance in the message.
You're going to love the January experience, because there is a whole section where we'll do not the deepest dive, but a pretty deep dive into swamping and into emotional range. And it's so much fun. We forget that it's cleansing and phenomenal to feel every drop of what we were put on this earth and in this life to feel. You wouldn't want to have a life without heartbreak.
Yes.
Without like longing, without jealousy. That's a way we know we're alive and filled with deep feelings, which we all want to have.
It's in the polarity, exactly. So I told myself, even though I could talk to you for weeks, I was going to keep this a teaser. So
Great.
I want to leave people with, a sense of where to find you, what you're up to, and, how they can dive deeper. Obviously, I could not recommend this book more. I literally couldn't. It's so easy to read. It's literally a pleasure to read itself. But I think is a message that it couldn't be more timely. And so I obviously recommend, your latest manifesto. But tell us what else you're up to, Regena.
Well, about the book, if on my website, which is mamagenas.com/new book. If you purchase the book there, you also get a free gift of an audio of my first book. But you can also get it on Amazon if that's easier, or Barnes and Noble or anywhere. Secondly, we have an event coming up in January, which is called the Womanly Arts Experience. So if people go to my website, which is Womanly Arts the Womanly Arts Mastery /experience.com, they will be able to sign up for that. And we're going to be doing it at the Javits Center on January 21st and 22nd of this year. So that's a way to do a live event with me. And it's an extraordinary event. It's the greatest celebration of womanhood that you will ever encounter. Every facet, every drop of woman is celebrated at that event.
Awesome. I love that. I will be there with my girls, and I, could be more excited. I think it's really the moment for this message, and it certainly brings, such an elevating expansion to my own message. So I'm so grateful to have crossed paths and for your time today. And we'll make sure to have all those links in these notes online. So thank you so much. And I so look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Kelly. It was a pleasure.
Awesome.